So Parshas Bo, in my mind, is probably the most exciting Parsha in the Torah. Obviously, every Parsha is important. Um, Certainly, there are Parshios that have very dramatic moments in them, but this one seems to be the most jam-packed to me, because you have both the Makos, right? The Makos are always interesting, even to even to young children. There's so much to imagine when it comes to the occurrence of the Makos. And then you have Yetzias Mitzrayim, and you have the very important mitzvos that go along with Yetzias Mitzrayim, which plays such a foundational role in our lives. The holiday of Pesach and everything that goes on with Pesach. Pesach is less than 10 weeks away, so start preparing, start getting anxious. But I want to focus on Perek Yud Beis and how the holiday of Pesach is laid out in the Parsha. Not necessarily to study the holiday, but to study how the Torah presents the holiday, how the Torah presents the commemoration of an event while the event is going on. That's what's most remarkable, I think, about this, is that there isn't this clear dichotomy between event and then reflecting on the event to commemorate it, right? If you look at Megillas Esther, right, the Megillas Esther, you have the whole story, the story of the miracle and how Esther, together with Mordechai's support, saved the Jewish people. And then in the aftermath of that miracle, you then have instructions of how to observe a holiday to commemorate that miracle. When it comes to Pesach, we're already getting instructions how to commemorate this miracle before the miracle has even been completed. Makas Bechoros hasn't happened yet. The actual leaving, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, hasn't occurred yet. And we're told that we have a holiday for 7 days, and Chazal tell us that on the 7th day was when Kriyas Yamsuf happened, which is also a very important event, and that hasn't happened yet. And yet we turn to Perek Yud Beis, and the instructions for the holiday are already being laid out. An obvious reason for this is part of the holiday is already being observed by Bnei Yisrael in Mitzrayim. If part of the holiday is bringing the Korban Pesach and eating matzah, so the instructions here aren't necessarily being given to us who are reading the Chumash. The instructions are being given to the Bnei Yisrael who are actually in Mitzrayim. So it makes sense. So that's one reason why the holiday is being rolled out even before the event has been completed, because part of the event is Bnei Yisrael observing part of the holiday, right? What's going to be a practice Ledoros, what's going to be a practice for future generations of bringing the Korban Pesach, of eating it with matzah, that is already an expectation, that is already a commandment on the people experiencing the miracle live. So let's take a look at the psukim and let's see how the Torah accomplishes this. How the Torah presents us a commemoration for an event while the event is going on. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe v'el Aharon be'eretz Mitzrayim lemor, Perek Yud Beis pasuk Aleph. Hashem says to Moshe and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim, Rishon hu l'chodshei hashana. This month is the head of the months. It's the beginning of the months. Rishon hu, it is first for you for the months of the year. Okay, so that's an important mitzvah to lay down. It's a very important mitzvah, as we know from various places. But I don't want to focus on that necessarily. But that's what introduces this section. And this very important month, during this very important month, this is what you shall do. On the 10th of this month, so each person should take a lamb, should take a seh, leves avos, right? The house of the ancestral home or the tribal home. selabais, a lamb for each household, which I think is intentionally poetic. I don't want to focus on this today, but selaves avos selabayis, base avos and bias, right, which all sound alike, I think is intentionally poetic. There's deep meaning in the fact that this is being done by households. But let's continue. And so if one household cannot finish a lamb, they should join up with a neighboring household. It should be a unblemished lamb in its first year. You should take it from the sheep or the goats. You should watch it until the 14th of this month. And then it shall be slaughtered. Kol kahal adas Yisrael. Right? The entire community, the entire congregation, the entire assembly of the congregation of Israel, as how Rabbi Steinsaltz translates it, shall slaughter it bein harbayim in the afternoon. So that is to take place on the 14th of the first month of the year. And you shall take from the blood, and you should put it on the two doorposts and over the lintel on the homes in which the Korban Pesach will be eaten. And you should eat of the meat of this animal that night. Now, what is that night? That night means the night following the 14th. Now we know from Jewish tradition that the day begins at the night, right? So that night is the 15th. But just notice for a moment that it just says Balayla Hazeh. It doesn't say you eat it on the 15th. It says you eat it at that night following the afternoon of the 14th, which is going to be important in a moment. Sli eish umatzos al merorim yochluhu. Roasted together with matzah and with merorim, bitter herbs, you shall eat it. And then there are more instructions. I'm going to read through this quickly. It should not be eaten raw. You should not cook it in water. You should roast it on fire, over fire, and you should not leave anything over until the morning. Pasuk Yud Aleph, v'chacha tochlu oso, and this is how you shall eat it. Mosnechem chagurim nalechem b'raglechem makalchem b'yadchem v'chaltem also b'chipazon pesach hu Hashem. And you shall eat it ready to go. It doesn't say ready to go, but it says you should, your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, your staffs in your hands, and you should eat it b'chipazon, in haste. Pesach hu Hashem. It is a Pesach. Now, Pesach, as a concept, this is the first time it appears, right? We don't know anything from the word Pesach yet. Already, this korban is referred to as a Pesach hu Hashem, but we don't know anything about Pesach. We don't even know what that means at this point in the Torah. It is a paschal lamb. It is a Pesach for Hashem. We grow up knowing exactly what it's about. We know what Pesach means, Passover, right? But notice that when Pesach is introduced to us, we don't know anything. We don't know what Pesach means. We don't know the significance of the word Pesach. But now we're going to find out. I will pass through, I'll pass through the land of Mitzrayim, Balayla Hazeh, this night, again, not the 15th of Nisan, but the night after one slaughters this animal, this lamb. And I will smite the Bechor, the firstborn Eretz Mitzrayim, from man to beast. And I will administer punishment to all the gods of Egypt. I am Hashem. That blood that you put over your doorpost, alabatim asher atem sham, it will be a sign. I will see the blood, and I will pass over. There's a wonderful discussion on what pasachti really means, but I'm just going to go with the quick and easy translation of passing over. I will pass over you. And you will not suffer from the plague that I am unleashing on Mitzrayim. Okay. So now I understand what Pesach means. It clearly comes from the word ufasachti. But notice that we're told it's a Pesach, and then we're given an explanation of what does Pesach mean, because I think that's significant. And okay, and so now up until this point, these are instructions for Bnei Israel in Mitzrayim. The rabbis refer to this as Pesach Mitzrayim. Pesach Mitzrayim is the holiday of Pesach that's observed in Mitzrayim. Right? Again, as I mentioned, we're talking about like a holiday that's celebrated in the future, but it's strange because this holiday is already being celebrated even before the event has completed. And part of the event is the beginning of the observance of the holiday, right? This thing that we call Pesach Mitzrayim, right? Pesach Mitzrayim is the commandments that were given to Bnei Israel to observe in Mitzrayim as part of the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And then we've just completed Pasuk Yud Gimel, verse 13. Then in Pasuk Yud Daled, you have a transition. You have an important transition, because what does it say? V'haya hayom hazeh lachem lezikaron. This day shall be remembered. It shall be a day of remembering. V'chagosemo chag Hashem. You shall celebrate it as a festival to Hashem, lidorosechem, in your future generations. So now we're transitioning from, here are the instructions for Pesach Mitzrayim. Guess what? You should keep this in the future. Now we get to what the rabbis call Pesach Lidoros, or Pesach Doros, right? Pesach of future generations. Right? We're now transitioning from the Pesach that was observed in Mitzrayim to the Pesach that should be observed after Mitzrayim. You shall celebrate it as a Chag LaHashem. You should celebrate it for, as a Chukas Olam, as an eternal statute. And what is it going to look like? Shivas Yom Matzos Tochelu. You should eat matzah for 7 days. But on the first day or before the first day, you shall destroy all seor from your homes. You should not eat chametz. One will be cut off from the Jewish people if you eat chametz. On the first day, it should be a Mikra Kodesh, and on the seventh day, it will be Mikra Kodesh. Whatever you need to do for ochal nefesh, for preparing food, you can do. Ushmartem es hamatzos. You should watch the matzos. Ki be'etzem hayom hazeh hotzeisi esivosechem eretz Mitzrayim. Because in the height of the day, hotzeisi, I took out your hosts from Eretz Yisrael. Ushmartem es hayom hazeh l'dorosechem chukas olam, and you shall keep this day for future generations. Barishon, ba'asar yom lachodesh ba'erev. Tochlu matzos ad yom ha'echad v'ashim lachodesh ba'erev. Right on the first day, on the 14th of the month at night, you shall eat matzos, and then you should right until the 21st in the evening. Until the 21st of Nisan in the evening. Shiva Sivim Sorlim, say right, and for those 7 days you should not find any chametz, and you shall not consume any chametz. Pasuk Chav, verse 20, Kol machmetzes lo sochelu, b'chol moshvosechem, wherever you live, tochlu matzos, you shall eat matzah. Now, we have to take a step back here, because the pasuk in Yud Zayin said you shall keep this holiday because I took out the Jewish people from Mitzrayim on this day. What's the problem with that? They haven't been taken out yet. We're given the entire holiday before anything has actually happened. Remember, what day are these instructions being given? This is Rosh Chodesh Nisan, right? This is the first of Nisan that Hashem is speaking to Moshe, and Moshe is going to transmit this to the Jewish people. So this is the first of Nisan. On the first of Nisan, he's telling us, in 10 days, you're going to take in a lamb. 4 days later, you're going to slaughter it. The day after, you're going to leave. And so observe this holiday. But none of that has happened yet. If you look carefully at what the Torah has told us until now, right? The Torah has told us about what happens on the 10th day and on the 14th day. And that's it. And that's it. We know what's going to happen on the 14th. We're going to slaughter the animal. We know what's going to happen on the night of the 15th. We're gonna eat the Korban Pesach. And yet, we're giving instructions Ladoros for a holiday commemorating an event, namely Yetzias Mitzrayim, that hasn't happened yet. Why does the Torah command us to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim before it even happened? It's a little bit strange. The rabbis are sensitive to this. Chazal, the Medrash are sensitive to this. Many commentaries are sensitive to this. Many students of the Torah notice this difficulty, this strange way of presenting, strange way of presenting this this concept. If we look at how Rashi deals with this issue, who clearly senses it, if for those who are familiar with Rashi, you won't be surprised to know that Rashi kind of cuts up the paragraph and says, yeah, it's presented now, but really it was said later, right? Because what does Rashi say? So Rashi says that if the pasuk that we're really focused on is Hayom Hazeh, right? If you take a look at pasuk Yudalid, right? So going back to pasuk Yudalid, v'haya Hayom Hazeh lachem lezikaron, right? This day will be a zikaron. This is the transition pasuk where we go from Pesach Mitzrayim to Pesach Doros, and this is the pasuk that seems most strange to us, right? Because this day, you will remember this day, but the events haven't even occurred yet to remember them. So what does Rashi say, right? So Rashi says, lezikaron ledoros, right? You should remember this forever. And Rashi, quoting the Medrash, says, we don't even know yet which day is the Yom HaZikaron. Because again, it says, Vayah Hayom Hazeh. It doesn't, so which day is Hayom Hazeh? So Rashi, quoting the Medrash, says, well, we're not really sure what day it is. Talmud Lomar is Zachoras Yom Hazeh Asher Yetzasem. Right? So quotes a pasuk in the next parak after the Jewish people have left, repeating this concept, say, we find out later that the Hayom Hazeh Zikaron is the 15th of Nisan, is the day that we left Mitzrayim. Heavy Omer Yom Chamishasar B'Nisan Hu Shal Yom Tov Shaylel Chamishasar Achlus HaPesach V'Laboker Yatzau. So it must be that Hayom Hazeh. What is this day? It's the 15th, the day in which they will leave Mitzrayim. But right now, the Medrash that Rashi quotes clearly validates the fact that this pasuk, we don't know what it's referring to on its surface. I mean, we know from context, we know because we've gone to school all our lives, but if you look at it plainly, so Chag Hashem doesn't make sense yet. And it's not clear what this Hayom Hazeh is referring to. Now, one thing I should mention though is that our whole question is based on the idea that these events haven't happened yet, that we're already being commanded to remember events that haven't happened yet. To be intellectually honest, Hashem has already said twice what is going to happen, right? First of all, Hashem has already said that the Jewish people are going to be taken out of Mitzrayim. That's number one. But what do I mean by twice? Twice, Hashem has already said that he's going to smite the firstborn. At the very beginning of the story, when Moshe is on his way back from Midian, Hashem says to him, Hine anochi horeges bincha b'chorecha, right? Hashem says, B'ni b'chori Yisrael. Israel is my firstborn. If you don't let them go, I'm going to smite your firstborn. Hashem said that even before Moshe got back to Mitzrayim. That's number one. Number two, earlier in this week's Parsha, in Parsha's Bo, Hashem says, Od nega echad avi al paro v'al Mitzrayim. I'm going to bring one more makkah. This is after Choshech. I'm going to bring one more makkah, and then I'm going to take you out. I'm going to smite the firstborn. So Hashem has already told us what's going to happen in the future. So the fact that the Torah starts giving us the elements of the holiday, of an event that hasn't happened yet, it's a little bit less difficult in my mind if you take into account the fact that Hashem has already told us some of the events that will happen. That's just a minor observation. But when it comes to this pasuk, there could be another way of explaining this. A different way than Rashi and the Medrash, right? Rashi and the Medrash say it's referring to something that hasn't happened yet, and really, you can kind of like cut this pasuk out and put it later. It's referring to something that hasn't necessarily happened yet. But there's another way, right? There is another way, and what is that other way? That other way is to say that Hayom Hazeh is not referring to Yetzias Mitzrayim per se. Hayom Hazeh is not necessarily referring to the day of the 15th when the Jewish people leave Mitzrayim. And the Ibn Ezra sort of hints at this, and later scholars develop it even further. Because what does the Ibn Ezra say? Ibn Ezra says that when it says in Pasuk Yudalid, Lidorosechem chukas olam tichaguhu, it's very precise. Because when you say Lidorosechem, there's another word that often comes with the word Lidorosechem, specifically when it comes to korbanos, that's missing in this pasuk. And that is B'chol moshvosechem, wherever you dwell. Why is it important that it says Lidorosechem, future generations, but not B'chol moshvosechem? Because it's only referring to a korban. It's only referring to Korban Pesach, right? Korban Pesach is not brought B'chol moshvosechem. You cannot bring the Korban Pesach wherever you live. We can't bring the Korban Pesach in Englewood, New Jersey. We can't bring the Korban Pesach in any other place outside of the Beis HaMikdash. And according to some opinions, you need a Beis HaMikdash. According to some opinions, you don't need a Beis HaMikdash. But you cannot. But you cannot bring it wherever you want, right? B'chol moshvosechem. And if that's the case, this is the observation of the Ibn Ezra. So what V'chag Osem is referring to is not the full holiday of what we call Pesach, but really is called by the Torah Chag Hamatzos. That when it says here in Pasuk Yudalad V'chag Osem Oso Chag L'Hashem, it's not referring to the 7-day holiday. Instead, it's referring to something else, which is sort of like a half-day holiday. And that's the holiday that occurs before Chag Hamatzos. What holiday occurs before Chag Hamatzos? Chag HaPesach. The holiday of the Pesach, the holiday of the Korban Pesach. And Rabbi Mordechai Breuer, Zichrono Livracha, a great Bible scholar, one of the great Bible scholars of the 20th century, develops this idea in detail in an article, and some of his students have expanded upon it as well. Namely, that when we know that the holidays have different names, so we know that Pesach has several different names, including Chag HaPesach and Chag HaMatzos. So Rav Breuer, following this approach of the Ibn Ezra, basically distinguishes between two holidays that are linked, that are fundamentally linked, but are distinct in some ways. First holiday, Chag Pesach, begins in the afternoon of the 14th of Nisan with the slaughtering of the Korban Pesach. And that holiday concludes that night. Now, on the calendar, that night is the 15th. But I've showed you several times, or at least 2 times, where it doesn't refer to it as the 15th, but rather the night after the 14th. Meaning there's a holiday that starts on the 14th and goes into the night. And that's Chag Pesach. It's the slaughtering of the Korban Pesach and the consumption of the Korban Pesach. That is a distinct holiday called Chag Pesach, the holiday of Pesach, of the Paschal offering of the Korban Pesach. That night also begins another holiday, which is fundamentally linked, and that is Chag HaMatzos, because you begin eating the matzah and you have 7 days of matzah, 7 days of no chametz, 7 days of matzah. That's Chag HaMatzos, 2 distinct holidays. And if you look at the rest of the Torah, you'll find many times this holiday is referred to as Chag HaMatzos, but a couple times it's referred to as Chag HaPesach. I didn't put it up here on the screen, but the pasuk in Kisisa says, "Lo tishchat al chametz dam zivchi," right? Don't shecht your korban pesach while you still have chametz. V'lo yalin laboker zevach chag hapesach, I should say. Right. So that pasuk in Parshas Kisisa refers to zevach chag hapesach. Right. That is the zevach, the offering, the meal of the Pesach. And you know what's so interesting to me? It might be a minor point, but to me it's a major point. You look at this pasuk Yudalid, it says, "V'haya hayom hazel zikaron v'chagosem oso chag l'Hashem." This day singular. This day singular shall be remembered, and you shall celebrate it. This single day you shall celebrate in the future. Why is it one day? It's a 7-day holiday, I thought. Right? Pesach is 7 days. In fact, in the next few psukim, it's going to say Mikra Kodesh on the first day, Mikra Kodesh on the 7th day, 7 days of matzah. But yet, this pasuk Yudalid, V'hayo hayom hazeh, singular, lachem l'zikron v'chagosem oso, not v'chagosem osam. It's not that you celebrate these days. No, it's you celebrate this day singular. Clearly, there is a 1-day holiday here. And that 1-day holiday, according to Rav Breuer, is this individual holiday of Chag HaPesach. And another, again, what is kind of like a minor observation, but I think is a major point, is if you think about it, if Pesach is a holiday that is celebrated both while the event is taking place and in future generations after, how much of that holiday was celebrated in Mitzrayim? How much of the 7 days of Pesach, how much of those 7 days was observed in Mitzrayim, in Pesach Mitzrayim? Were they there for 7 days? No, they were there for 1 day. Right? If we have Pesach Ladoros, which is 7 days, and Pesach Mitzrayim was only 1 day. Because they brought the Korban Pesach, they slaughtered it on the 14th, they ate it on the 15th, they left the next morning. Be'etzem Yom Hazeh, the height of the day. So this holiday, which is starting in vivo, right? It's happening live during the event, the celebration of the holiday. The celebration in Mitzrayim was 1 day. So there's this 1-day holiday which commemorates that 1 day in Mitzrayim. That's Pesach Mitzrayim. So again, just to recap right now, we have Chag Pesach, which is the afternoon of the 14th, and that night when you eat the Korban Pesach, that's Chag Pesach, and Chag HaMatzos begins that night on the 15th and stretches for 7 days in Eretz Yisrael. If you take a look, we're not going to flip there. I'll just read for you. But the cycle of the festivals are conveyed by the Torah in several places. One of those places is in Parshas Emor. Let me read to you how the holiday is mentioned in Parshas Emor. These are the holidays of Hashem. B'chodesh Rishon, the first month, right? Nisan's the first month. Ba'arba'asar lachodesh ve'in harbayim, Pesach Lashem. Beautiful. On the 14th of the month in the afternoon, Pesach Lashem. You might say, oh, it's just referring to the Korban Pesach, but no. It says these are the Moadei Hashem. On the 14th, Pesach Lashem. And then it continues. Uva chamisha asar yom lachodesh hazeh, chag hamatzos Lashem, shivas yamim matzos tochelu. And then on the 15th of this month, you celebrate Chag Hamatzos. Matzos tochelu, right? Chag Hamatzos Lashem. Shivas Yamim. For 7 days. So there you have it. There you have it. In Parsha Emor, it refers specifically, clearly, concretely to the 14th as Pesach Lashem, and the 15th begins 7 days of Chag Hamatzos Lashem. And by the way, if you look at our parsha, if you just turn the page or just go to Pasuk Yud Ches, you'll see it says the same thing here. Even once the whole holiday has been spelled out, the Chag HaMatzos part, still the anchor is the 15th, it is the 14th, not the 15th. Pasuk Yud Ches, verse 18. Let's look at it again. Right? Barishon be'arba'asar yom lachodesh ba'erev tochlu matzos. It doesn't say eat matzos the night of the 15th. It says eat matzos the night after the 14th. That this Chag HaPesach kicks off Chag HaMatzos, as it were. That you celebrate Chag HaPesach the 14th, you eat the Korban Pesach, and now you eat matzah. It doesn't say the 15th. It says the 14th, ba'erev, which is at night, right? It's not the night before when we do B'dikas Chametz. No, it's the 14th. It's the night after the 14th, because this is a distinct holiday that is fundamentally linked to Chag HaMatzos, and it kicks off the Chag HaMatzos, but it is seen in and of itself. Why? Why does the Torah have to make it so complex? Why can't the holiday just be simple, right? One holiday, we do this, we do the Korban Pesach, we eat matzah, holiday starts here, ends here. Why this subtlety, which begs interpretation, which then you have to uncover the fact that there's two distinct holidays, right? There's the holiday of the 14th, the Chag HaPesach, and then there's the holiday of Chag HaMatzos. Why? So I think I don't think it's any great chiddush, but clearly Hashem sees the Geula, the redemption, as unfolding in stages, right? We already got a sense of that in last week's Parsha, Parshas Va'era, where we had the Arba Lashonos Geula, V'otzeisi, V'yitzalti, V'ga'alti, V'lakachti, right? So we have all the, we have these four expressions of Geula, and which clearly gives us a sense that things will happen in stages, but here I think we see it even more clearly, because Hashem is commanding the Jewish people to perform the Korban Pesach in Mitzrayim. That's an important event, and that important event is separate and distinct from the Yetzias Mitzrayim, which will happen the next day, and that each one can be seen as carrying as reflecting a different significance when it comes to the concept of redemption. Perhaps Korban Pesach is a spiritual redemption. Korban Pesach is an assertion of faith. Korban Pesach is a demonstrative act by which Bnei Yisrael indicate that they are casting their lot with Hashem, that they will follow him out of Mitzrayim, that they believe in Hashem and they believe in the destiny of the Jewish people, and they see themselves as part of that destiny. That's Korban Pesach. That's something to recognize in and of itself. And that is Chag HaPesach. And then following that spiritual redemption, the next day, they will physically walk out of Mitzrayim. A physical redemption. And that physical redemption is commemorated by the Chag Hamatzos, which begins on the 15th and goes for 7 days. And if you think about it, it makes sense because it culminates with another physical redemption, namely walking through the dry land between the water and seeing Paro and his army drown in the Yam Suf. So even the 7 days represent two different stages of the physical redemption, as it were. Right? The first day of the Chag HaMatzos is the physical walking out of Mitzrayim, and the 7th day is the physical walking through the Yam Suf. Right? There, it's like you get off the plane and then you go through security and then you go to baggage claim, right? You go through all these different steps in order, until you finally get out of the airport and you reach your destination, right? Same thing with Pesach, right? They leave Mitzrayim, then they go a few more days, and then they go through the Yam Suf. That's all stages in the physical redemption, the actual exit from Mitzrayim. That's Chag HaMatzos. But what happened in Mitzrayim, what we call Pesach Mitzrayim, that was a one-day affair, and that was strictly a spiritual, deeply significant redemption, deeply significant spiritual redemption. And it's interesting because you could say another way you could look at it is that the Jewish people were redeemed in their own eyes on Chag HaPesach, that they followed Hashem's commandments, that they brought the Korban Pesach, that they put the blood over the doorpost, that Hashem passed over their homes. That was to enable the Jewish people to see themselves as redeemed. And then when they left the next day, that was for the Egyptians to see that they were redeemed. When the Egyptians see them walk out. And you know what's so interesting to me? I don't know completely what to make of it, so I offer it to you for your thoughts. But there's an interesting link between these two events, in that they both have an element of haste, of quickness, right? Hashem says that you should eat the Korban Pesach b'chipazon, right? Masnechem chagurim makelchem biyadchem, and alechem b'raglechem makelchem biyadchem, right? You should eat it all dressed, and you should eat it b'chipazon. That's the Korban Pesach. That's Chag HaPesach, and also Chag HaMatzos. The matzah did not have time to bake because the Egyptians, goaded them out, pushed them out. So there was an element of haste, of rapidness, right? In both of these elements, right? The Chag HaPesach element and the Chag HaMatzos element, the spiritual redemption and the physical redemption. You eat the Korban Pesach b'chipazon, and the matzah did not have time to rise. That was also that exit happened in haste as well. What's the meaning behind it? I still have to think about it some more, and I leave it to you to help me develop. But there is that link between the Chag HaPesach and the Chag HaMatzos. They both have that element of haste, right? They both have that element of things happening quickly. To me, it conveys a sense of action. Right? If you're working in haste, you're not thinking, you're not deliberating. It's not that it's not a mindful exercise. I think there's certainly some mindfulness in eating Korban Pesach and understanding its meaning, but you're not deliberating over it. Perhaps this notion of haste carries with it an element of certainty and belief. Right? If you believe, then you do things without hesitation. You do them unflinching. And so perhaps a chipazon in the Korban Pesach and the haste that's found reflected in the matzah reflects this deep sense of emunah that we act. We have no hesitation, we have no qualms, no need to deliberate, no thought. Right? When athletes, high level athletes, when they hone a skill, they want to make, they want certain motions to be automatic, where there's no thinking about it, right? They just react, and they have the muscle memory, and they're able to do whatever they need to do repeatedly without thinking, because they've trained, because they're secure, because they know exactly what they want to do. That, I think, is perhaps the idea that's found both in Chag HaPesach and Chag HaMatzos. They reflect a certain faith. And so therefore, it's an instant, quick action that reflects that certainty. maybe that's something to think about further. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them up into the chat. Otherwise, have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, Rabbi.